Hi everyone, this is Sally Grayman and this is OCD Live. So this week I wanted to discuss at length the topic of physical compulsions and avoidance and all of that because I'm getting a lot of questions on it and I don't think it's really quite clear to people what they should be doing and things like that. So with physical compulsions, every time you do a physical compulsion, you are actually making the situation worse. So it doesn't matter what kind of compulsion it is, if it's checking, if it's um, like physical compulsion or mental compulsion or counting or analyzing or avoidance, which is you're compulsively avoiding doing something. So, for example, I never go to this place, or I always avoid this building, or I always avoid this road because it's going to give me OCD. All of these things send the same signal to your mind, and that signal is that you are afraid. It could be that you're afraid of specifically getting an OCD thought, or you're afraid that the situation could be actually true in general. It doesn't really specifically matter. What matters is that you are sending a signal that you're afraid. Your brain is catching that signal that you are afraid and is saying, okay, you're afraid of, for example, if you're avoiding a certain road. Okay, you're afraid of a certain road. It could be dangerous. Something could happen. Let me send you another, excuse me, let me send you another thought about a different road. So in this way, you start to grow your obsession. So, and this is what I mean when I say in my other videos that the OCD spreads, that you start out with one little issue and then it grows. So for example, say for example, you're afraid of germs. You're afraid to touch just the doorknobs on public bathrooms. Okay, so you don't touch those. Then you start to think, well, those people that are touching the public bathrooms, they're also touching other doors. I guess I won't touch any of the doors outside. Then you start to think, well, maybe in my house the doors are also not good. Like the doorknobs are also dirty. Okay, so even in your own house, then you start to think of other objects, and slowly you start to limit yourself in every area of your life. So it's very important that you don't look at compulsions as a part of OCD, meaning that, well, I have OCD, so I have compulsions, so I have to do it. A lot of people, especially younger people, tend to do that because honestly, they don't know better because nobody taught them. Because there's lack of education on OCD right now. People think, well, if you have OCD, then you have the compulsions. What can you do? Well, you can slowly start cutting them out. So, for example, if you are in a situation where you are touching uh, things a certain way or whatever your compulsion is, start to go back on it. So just like we with this loop that I just talked about of touching doors, right? Doorknobs. Now the situation is that the person was not touching the doorknobs in the bathroom, then not public bathrooms, then not touching the doorknobs in the public areas in general, then in the house. And now they can't touch a doorknob at all, and it gives them a lot of stress. Okay, if this is your setup, to undo it, we have to do slowly exactly how you came here. So to go from not touching any doorknobs to touch a doorknob in the public bathrooms would be really too far of a leap. You don't want to do that. But if you start where you last left off, so the doorknobs in your house, this is the last part where you left off, right? And I'm just using the doorknobs as an example. You can use it for whatever purpose you have, right? So start there and start to work up to the more scary ones. So, okay, I'm just gonna touch the doorknob in my house in the first the rooms that I feel comfortable in, okay? You'll still get anxiety, and it's okay to get anxiety. People, a lot of the times when they have OCD, they think, I don't wanna have anxiety. Obviously, you don't wanna have anxiety, but anxiety is coming from the fact that before in the past you were seeking reassurance. It has really nothing to do with now. you know it's only because in the past you made something important to your mind is now throwing it back at you in the present time. It's an old programming. Right now what you're doing though is creating new programming for the future. Okay, so the anxiety will happen when you start to undo this and touch the doorknobs. Fine. You will have to sit with it. If you do nothing about the anxiety, if you don't wash your hands or do any kind of, again, reassuring behavior, it will go away because you're not powering it up, okay? So the anxiety is what it is. What you're doing now will fix it so you don't have it in the future, okay? So you start to touch the doorknobs at home. Just do this, okay? Don't do any more than that. And again, I'm using doorknobs as example. Try to apply it to your own situation, okay? So you start to do it. At first, you will get a lot of anxiety. Then, as you continue to do it over time, you will see that, okay, well, there's nothing scary here. Obviously, I'm not getting sick. There's nothing happening. It's not a big deal. So then you can move on to the second scariest thing. So just like we talked about, the second scariest thing would be touching doorknobs in the public places. Okay, you start to do it. Again, you're going to get a lot of anxiety. As you continue, you're going to get less and less anxiety until it goes away or goes to very low. Then you can attempt the bathroom thing. So it's a slow, just like you gotten in this situation, this is exactly how you're going to get out of it. Okay? So this is to do with physical compulsions. If your physical compulsion is not so much different things, but just spending a lot of time doing one thing, such as washing your hands, for example. You're washing your hands for, say, like, can go up to like 20 minutes at a time. See if you can do 18 minutes. Try to do 18 minutes. Get a timer and time yourself and make sure you don't go over 18 minutes, okay? Then when you feel comfortable, go to 15 and 13 and so on. Don't do too big of jumps with your compulsions because it's, because again, I've been doing this for, I say 6 years, but I think it's been more like 7 years now. I just gotten used to saying 6 years. Um, that I see a lot of people going through it, and I find that usually people do best when they create more of a stable base to it, because if you jump through all of these things, like, okay, today I'm doing this, next day I'm moving to the next step, then you might have a crash and it might all unravel again. Do you know what I mean? So there should be a speed to it. You don't want to take too long because, I mean, why would you suffer needlessly, right? um, but at the same time, you don't want to go too fast where your brain is not being able to adjust, because while you are doing all these things, your mind is actually adjusting. So you want to make sure that you are taking your time with it, because you want to give your mind that time to actually physically adjust on a physical level, right? So okay, now let's talk about mental compulsions, because mental compulsions is a field entirely in its own. Nobody's talking about it, and people are suffering. So with mental compulsions, you want to make sure that you, first of all, you figure out where they are happening, because a lot of the times they're happening so fast that you might not be even realizing that you're doing a mental compulsion when you are doing it. So you want to make sure you are addressing it first of all. Mental compulsions coming in the form of avoidance, like I said, it could be mental avoidance where, okay, I'm too scared to think about this topic. This is not the same thing as saying, I am choosing not to think about this topic because I know it's OCD, or because I'm choosing to believe it's OCD. Those are two different things, and they're sending two very different signals. If you're not sure if you're doing the right thing or if you're doing the wrong thing ever in terms of OCD recovery, there's always a test to easily be able to tell. What is your underlying position in this? Is it the position of fear? Are you doing it out of fear, or are you doing it out of power? When you're saying, I'm avoiding this because I'm scared, mentally or physically, right? Like, I'm avoiding a road, or I'm avoiding looking at certain like TV shows because they trigger my OCD, or anything like that. This is avoidance out of fear. So this sends a signal to your mind that you are scared, and your mind in turn is going to try to protect you by sending you more of these thoughts. So you're getting the opposite of what you want. So that's wrong. If you're saying, I am choosing to do this or that, or I'm choosing to avoid this, but you're coming from a position of power and it has nothing to do with your OCD, then it's okay. Do you know what I'm saying? So, for example, well, it will have something to do with your OCD, obviously, but it has nothing to do with you being scared of the OCD. So, for example, saying, if you, for example, okay, if you have a homosexual OCD, right? And with homosexual OCD, actually, I'm going to do a book on it at some point. I've been kind of swamped right now, so I'm trying to do the best I can. But it's a very, very common OCD if you're having that type of OCD. I get emails every week about it. Actually, more than every week, to be honest with you. I get, every few days I get an OCD about that kind of topic. So it's very, very common topic for OCD. So for example, you're saying, um, in case of homosexual OCD, okay? You're saying, I'm so scared of this type of thought. I'm gonna avoid all shows that have like uh, like people of that orientation. Um, it's just too scary, and it's gonna trigger my OCD. You are making yourself worse when you do this because you're sending a signal of fear. If you're saying this topic is not important to me, I'm not going to take it seriously anymore. It's just OCD playing tricks on me. Therefore, I'm not going to watch those shows. Or I'm not going to really care about it. I'm not going to pay attention to it. If I see a show, I see a show. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it either way. Very similar message, but very different signal, right? You're coming from a position of power. You're saying, I don't care. This is OCD. And you are in control. In the other thing, you're like a scared rabbit. Do you know what I mean? You're running away from something. Here, you're like a lion, You're facing it, you're not scared of it, you're ready to take it on. You know? That is the main difference. So if you're ever unsure what position you're in, when it comes to the compulsion, if it's a compulsion, all this stuff, then this is how you can easily judge it. What signal are you sending? Are you in fear? Are you doing it out of fear? And if you are, then you need to change your position, because the more fear signals you send, the worse your OCD will become over time. So, with mental compulsions, figure out why you're doing it. If you're doing avoidance, why are you doing it? Chances are, if you're putting effort into it, it's for the right reasons. If you're doing it passively, it's usually for the wrong reasons, because your natural instinct is to seek reassurance, because our natural instinct is to protect ourselves, right? It's just with OCD, you're seeking reassurance, you're protecting yourself from something that you don't need to be protected from. So it starts to be a situation where you're confusing your mind, right? But, don't ever, this is another thing I wanted to bring up. I'll do a separate show on it when I have time. But I hear so many times, guys, where a client comes to me and we start talking, and they say that the doctor told me that I will never recover. And then we talk, and then in a month or two, this person recovers. Okay? I hear it so many times. You guys, it's very important that you don't believe people when they tell you these things. Doctors, family members, friends, whoever, people online. There are people that cannot recover. Um, they're just like, I see it from time to time in my own work as well, right? Um, Most people who come to me recover, but there is a percentage of people that do not. And I think that has to do with the fact that basically they're not ready yet, you know? So they're still too scared. They're still not able to face OCD. And that's, it doesn't mean that they will never recover, but just this is not the time for them. Do you know what I mean? So if you are talking to a person who is in that situation where it's not the time, and they can be doctors, doctors are not some sort of a magical, unicorn creature that's, immune from OCD. Doctors can have OCD as well. And if they never recovered, if maybe they relied on medication too much, or they weren't able to, they can tell you that you'll never recover, but that doesn't mean that you'll never recover. Do you know what I mean? So this is kind of an aside, but I just find it so important, because the first thing when it comes to recovery is that you have to focus and believe that you will recover, and I know I myself going through it, because if you guys don't know, I had OCD myself, and my OCD was extremely severe. Right now, actually, when I talk to a lot of my clients, I say, I actually had it. a lot worse, than most of my clients, right? So, and it's like, if I could recover, you know, I'm not the most strongest willed person, you know, I'm just a regular person, just like you, just like you, it's nothing special, and if I can recover, then you definitely can recover, you know, because I got to a point where I couldn't leave my house. It was really, really bad, and mainly the reason for that was because I didn't know anything about OCD, you know. So, and if somebody would have, I was lucky where nobody really gave me an opinion that I couldn't recover. Because I think to all of my environment, like the people around me, it was new too. Like nobody knew about OCD either. So they didn't really know to tell me, I think they were skeptical that I would ever recover just from, you know, how bad I was. But nobody really kind of said it to my face anyways. But if somebody's saying that to you, don't believe them, because I see people in really bad situations, and I've been at probably the worst possible OCD ever, and it's, you can recover. It's really, and I find that with OCD, as soon as you start to do the right things, as soon as you stop powering it up, the recovery is actually fairly quick. Considering how bad the person was just like weeks ago, the recovery is actually pretty quick. It's not miraculous, but it's quick, all things considered. So anyways, that was just two asides I wanted to kind of mention. um, so I wanted to go back to the mental compulsions and recognizing them and dealing with them. So, mental compulsions, okay, we went over the avoidance. Now, the reassurance. Reassurance can come in many ways, mental reassurance. Obviously, physical reassurance is going and asking somebody or checking online. Mental reassurance is going over the situation over and over again in your head. So, thinking over and over again about the situation, especially if it's a false memory type of OCD, going over the situation in the past. Did it happen? Did it not happen? How was the surroundings? What did everybody say? How did they act? All of this stuff, right? And you go over it continuously. And the more you do, the more of a signal of fear you send. Because every time you revisit this situation, you are sending a signal of fear over and over again. So, in this way, mental reassurance is actually worse than physical reassurance, because physical reassurance you're only going to do, how many times you're going to ask somebody, really, right? Like once, twice, three times. But mental reassurance is just a loop that's going on over and over. And this is, I find, from again talking to clients, that, and my own personal experience, that this is the most damaging kind of reassurance when it comes to OCD. And this is the one that's least talked about. So it's very important for you to know that every time you're isolating yourself and thinking about the situation, you are making yourself worse. And there's no kind of tiptoeing around it. This is exactly what's happening. So you have to do whatever it is that you need to do in order to not have those thoughts. Think of your mind like, like a monkey, okay? Right? Like a monkey. If you leave a monkey alone in your house, unattended, not busy, it's going to destroy your house. Okay? You got to give the monkey something to do. Okay? So let's figure out a way of what you can do to keep your mind occupied. It doesn't matter what you're doing. In the moment when you're having an OCD thought and you feel that push to just isolate yourself and go over the situation, figure out an activity, especially things that are like logical, such as like counting something, figuring out your bills, figuring out, I don't know, doing taxes, anything that's like away from free thought. Do you know what I mean? Like free association and all of that, right? Something logical. If you don't have anything like that, call a friend, go for a walk with somebody and talk to them. Not about OCD. Don't even mention OCD. Give your mind something else to focus on. Especially changing your surroundings really helps when you're going from an indoor to an outdoor, or an outdoor to an indoor, depending on where you started to get your OCD thoughts like really strong. So because when you change your surrounding, and when you stop, you give your mind basically a lot of new stuff to focus on. Okay, when it starts to focus on new things, it's going to have to let go of the OCD a little bit, not fully. So the anxiety is going to go down a little bit, just because it's going to be busy dealing with other real life issues. And then this is your opportunity to say, I'm choosing not to react, I'm choosing to believe it's OCD, I'm choosing to move on. And again, saying that, I actually should probably change it, because in my very first book, I had it that it says, and you guys, if you guys purchase this, you probably know what I'm talking about, that it says that I trust that it's OCD. And I think that it wasn't very clear what I meant by that. And now I say that I choose to trust that it's OCD. So it comes from a position, that word choose really adds the point of power to it, your own power. You know what I mean? I'm choosing to believe it's OCD. I'm choosing to move on. Meaning that you don't need proof. You don't need to check. You don't need to do all of this. You're choosing. If you're wrong, you'll deal with it when you're wrong. So far, nobody has been wrong about it being OCD, but maybe you'll be that first one, right? So I'm choosing to move on. I'm choosing to not pay attention, and I'm choosing to trust that it's OCD. And that's your opportunity to do it when your brain has something else to focus on, when your mind's a little bit busier. Because when your mind is like, if you're sitting in an empty room worrying about OCD, this is where your mind has got you. Your OCD has got you, you know? It has nothing else to focus on. This is where it can really cause a lot of damage. So another issue with that, with the internal compulsions, is a lot of the times it will hit you at the times where you are least powerful to handle it. For most people, that's especially in the morning. I would say every other person, if not almost every person who has OCD, has very strong OCD early in the morning. The reason for that is that in the morning, when you are just waking up, first of all, your serotonin levels um, in our circadian, however we say it, cycle, are the lowest at around 5 a.m. Okay? So if you're thinking that, okay, try to think of it now. 5 a.m., your serotonin levels are the lowest. Now, around 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., I believe, your cortisol levels are the highest throughout the day, I mean, right? So if you wake up, around that time, you get into a situation where your serotonin is still pretty low, because it was the lowest at around 5, right? And your cortisol is really high, and cortisol is a stress hormone. So you have low happiness hormone, high stress hormones. And you wake up, you have nothing else, you just woke up, no thoughts, nothing to do. Well, you have stuff to do, but nothing like the moment you wake up, you can't think of anything, right? So your OCD it just got you. It's a perfect spot for it. And that's why a lot of people have OCD early in the morning. Some people also get it late at night, middle of the night, those kind of things, trouble sleeping. And again, that's similar things too, because you don't have a cortisol problem late at night, but you still do have the problem of low serotonin, because serotonin goes down lower and lower throughout the night until it hits its lowest point at 5 a.m. And then after 5 a.m., it starts to rise, okay? So anywhere around that time, from say 1 a.m. to like 7, 8 a.m., it's still on the very low side. So both of those times can create a problem, and both of those times you're really not doing that much. So that's the reason for that. So those times especially, you want to make sure that if you are having thoughts in the morning, you just get out of bed. Don't linger in the bed. Don't allow your thoughts to grow, because the more you lay in that bed, the more your thoughts are going to grow, if they're already starting to grow. So get out of bed, do a lot of things, give your mind a lot of different things to focus on. So it's going to kind of let go a little bit again, just like we talked about, right? In the middle of the night, if this happens to you, you want to make sure you assess your situation. if you are feeling that, okay, this is just driving me crazy, I can't, sleep, I can't do anything, right? Then you have to get out of bed, do something, play a video game, whatever. I know video game is not really the best thing in terms of like messing with your circadian rhythms more, but at the same time, it's good in a way of detaching you from the OCD a little bit, or watching a TV show or doing something, so you're giving your mind some sort of thing. If you feel like you can uh, go back to sleep, then try to go back to sleep. Also, this is kind of like a little trick, but because this is actually a physical thing that's happening in your mind, sometimes it really helps if you're laying on one side of the, like on one side, say if you're laying on your right side in the bed, it helps if you turn to your left side and if you shake your head a little bit. Because, I don't know how it works really, to be honest with you, but it works. So shaking your head sometimes creates that clarity and stops, I think it just stops the neural pathways from firing exactly how they were firing, which was incorrectly. And it kind of gives you that moment of clarity a little bit. Also, breathing exercises really help. You guys, if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to email me. I do this show every Wednesday, by the way. So if you want me to answer a question, I'll be here next Wednesday to answer it. So email me to info@youhaveocd.com. But um, when you do breathing exercises, you probably heard it on my other shows, but do breath in on, say, 3 or 4 counts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, but a little slower than that. I'm just doing it for like the sake of timing here. In, so 4 in, 8 out. Your breath out has to be double the length of your breath in. Okay, do this 3 or 4 times. Don't overdo this because I heard that it could cause like physical issues if you constantly are doing this. But try to do this a few times. See how you feel. You should feel a feeling of relief if you're having a high anxiety. Okay. So, but again, don't overdo it. So yes, I just wanted to mention those things, and I would say that if you're suffering from OCD, which obviously you are if you're listening to this show, start with focusing, unless you have an OCD that's only has to do with physical compulsions. I would say that mental compulsions are usually the ones that need to be addressed most, because those are the ones that are done more frequently and the ones that are more damaging in terms of the signal they're sending. Because if they're done so much, like you can't do as many physical actions in order to give the feelings of like fear, the signal of fear, as you can with mentally just going over the situation just over and over and over again. You know. So focus on that, and no matter what, don't give in to the thoughts. They're OCD thoughts. I'm choosing not to pay attention, and make it universal. Anything to do with my topic. Say, for example, your topic is driving OCD. Anything to do with driving OCD, I'm choosing not to pay attention to. I don't care if it's this road, this person, that person, this situation, that situation. I'm not doing it. It has to do with driving, therefore it's OCD, therefore I'm not paying attention to it, therefore I'm not doing compulsions of any kind. If you approach it like this, it takes a lot of inner strength, but the inner strength does grow as you continue to do this. When I started out, people always ask me, how did you do it? When I started out, at first I was doing everything wrong because, again, I didn't know much about it. And as I progressed and I saw, okay, well, this is clearly not working for me. That is clearly not working for me. So let's try something else. And probably for me, it was more method of the elimination, that I tried everything and eventually something worked. And as you try to refuse reassurance, once I figured out the reassurance was the problem, and I tried to refuse reassurance. At first, I was very weak, and it would be like one step forward, one step back, then 2 steps forward, one step back. So, and then it started to be 3, 4 steps forward, then one step back. So it gets better as you progress until you get very confident and you get. So it's a momentum thing, that the more you do it, successfully, not successfully, doesn't matter. You keep trying, you will start to be more successful as you continue. That's 100%. I can tell you that from my clients, from myself. This is how it is, you know. So I hope this show has been helpful to you guys. Again, it's on every Wednesday. If you leave me a question, I can answer it confidentially on the show. I'm not gonna say your name or read your email entirely or anything like that. So nobody's gonna know it's you. But I can give a more at length answer when when I'm talking rather than when I'm writing emails, because you guys, you got to know that I'm getting so many emails. And also, if I have not replied to your email, please resend it. It's nothing personal. It's just that I'm getting so many emails, and sometimes an email just slips by and either I don't see it or it goes into spam and I didn't check it, because the volume of work that I have is just huge. So it's nothing personal. Please resend and I will answer you. Also, if you would like to have more information on the recovery program that's with me done privately, you can visit youhaveocd.com. There's also books available there. There's a lot of free information, so please check that out. And like I said, I'm always an email away, so please email at info@youhaveocd.com. Thank you guys so much. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. Tell others. This is a very important topic to discuss, and we need to get the awareness out there, because honestly there's not enough help for OCD, and this is happening around the world. Um, there needs to be more information on it. And I always say that everybody who recovers from this needs to put in some effort in order to help others recover, either through online or like however. But we need to get the message out there on the how to do it. And as soon as people understand how to do it, they will start to be on the process of the recovery. But they need that support, because I find that the more support a person has, especially in the beginning, the faster they recover. Thank you guys for listening. If you have listened all the way to the end, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you in the next show.